Welcome, everyone, and welcome to my wonderful panelists. I am super excited to be in conversation with all of you today. I know you bring with you a wealth of experience and expertise representing nonprofit, human resources and skill, industry, academia, right? As Madison said, our discussion today is focused on bridging the gap between theoretical knowledge and how we apply that to practical skills. And joining us today, I think I want to start there, Sandra Gabriele, an associate professor of communication studies at Concordia University. For the last 5 years, Sandra's also been the vice provost of innovation in teaching and learning. She's been leading several initiatives, both national and provincial, focusing on translating skills that learners learn and taking them to practical workforce. And she also contributes in improving the accessibility to learning environments. Next, we have Sukhwinder Auluck. Sukhwinder joins us from Kyndryl, Canada, and where he's director and industry partner responsible for manufacturing and telecommunication. Sukhwinder has over 25 years of IT industry experience. And I know personally that he has tremendous passion for bringing students and industry together in enhancing our Canadian innovation landscape. Next, I'm going to jump to the wonderful lady right next to me, Vanessa. Vanessa Herrick, who is a community development expert with a background in not-for-profit leadership, community development, engagement, and communications. She has lived and worked as a journalist in Kosovo, Afghanistan, and Peru, and is now working with NPower Canada and enriching lives through education. And last but not the least, Sabe Mpofu, who's the founder and CEO of Millenilink. That's a technology talent acquisition agency that helps organization addressing the talent gap, impacting businesses via recruitment and advisory services. He is also extremely passionate about aligning individuals and organizations to advance their career objectives and business objectives. He's been also working in the tech sector, primarily recruitment now for 15 years. Welcome once again, and let's dive right into it, right? So a report that I read recently, which was titled The Impact of Work Integrated Learning, it stated that, talked about a little bit about the benefits, academic benefits of participating in WIL. They appear to be amplified for students who belong to equity-deserving groups, as well as also students who enter the post-secondary world with the low academic achievements. Those students, they appear to have the highest and the greatest benefits from participating in WIL. So with that said, Vanessa, probably I'll start this panel with a question for you, and a two-part question. So what, according to you, would you think would be the key skills and competencies that the tech industry currently demands or will demand in the future? And also the second part being that what role does equity-deserving students play in the current workforce?
Am I on? Okay. Those are big questions. And especially right now, of course, I think a lot of people have those questions on their mind. What are the skills? What do we need to be reinforcing and encouraging our next generation of employment skilled workers and our current skilled workers, right? Because I think that all of us are going to be facing big changes in our roles, no matter who you are or what you're doing. So since we don't actually know 100% what's coming, I will say that the biggest things that are going to be most important are people's flexibility, willingness to change, excitement about possibilities and futures with AI and, you know, cyber, quantum, all of these things that are happening that of course create some discomfort, because the unknown does create discomfort, but they also will bring opportunity. as was mentioned, my background is in media. And so, of course, we've announced the death of radio for the last 100 years. Every time something new came out, that was it. It was the end of radio. And what we've seen is that workplaces, industries that are unable to adapt and unable to embrace the opportunities do pass. They are gone. But those who don't, those who understand where they fit in our social network and where they fit in what they serve to the community, they'll be okay. They'll change, they'll adapt. It may not happen tomorrow. But if you can take that and put it in your own career, and understand that this, you are going to need to learn new things, and that's exciting, and maybe you'll be in a completely different career in 3 years. That's cool, right? Like, that could be really awesome. So I think that's really important. And what opportunities does it open for equity-seeking groups? Well, I think it does a lot of things. It opens up what we look as the ideal employee will be. We're going to be looking for different skills. We're going to be looking for people who can face challenges and be excited and see opportunities. Equity-seeking groups, people who have been trying to be heard and adapting to everybody else's expectations their whole lives, those people are going to be fantastically successful in an environment that changes. And I think at the same time, it's our responsibility in the not-for-profit sector, in the academic sector, in recruitment, to keep encouraging employers about what the benefits are to embrace equity-seeking groups, be it newcomers, be it people who are coming back from retirement, be it people who are neurodiverse. These people all bring a new perspective. So instead of cultural fit, maybe start looking at cultural expansion, maybe start thinking about how your company can play a role in this new world. Thanks.
Excellent. I love that. And I also love the aspect of when you touched upon, well, the last thing that you said about cultural fit and cultural enhancement. I remember from our first discussion when we first met, we went all over the place, and that's like a whole new level of discussion. But this aspect of embracing the unknown and keeping your ears and eyes open and flexibility, I think those are absolutely gold. I don't know, Sandra, would you like to add to that and chime in?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that we think a lot about, obviously, when you're in a university setting is how our learners actually learn. But I think what often we lack in teaching our learners is those metacognitive skills, right? So how is it that you learn best? How is it that you are able to take in new information and then be able to do something with that? And that really, in what Vanessa was just describing, is one of the key aspects, is having a set of really strong foundational metacognitive skills and understanding who you are as a learner, because you will continue to learn. So this idea of lifelong learning, I think, is really critical for where we are, the adaptability that's required for a constantly changing workforce. I work in one of those dinosaur fields, just maybe like some of those media fields. And it's one of the things that we also ourselves need to be doing. And these kinds of situations where we're in dialogue with others is really important for that. So I think that's maybe the one other part that I would also like to add to that, is the opportunities to be in conversation with others. I think that's one of the things that the entire post-secondary network is now really embracing, are new partnerships, partnerships with each other. So universities partnering with each other. I have a lot of competency in one field. You have something else. Let's make a beautiful program together. Across the various levels. So in the last panel that we just heard, there are things here in Quebec called the DECBAC, which is really, and exists as well in Ontario and other provinces as well, this nice smooth transition between colleges and universities. But I'm, we're at the end of the pipeline, and I think an ecosystem approach to this is really, really critical, because as we were talking about over lunch, you can't think about training engineers and the next, world of tech leaders without having some of those foundational skills. And that doesn't happen in university, right? That's happening elsewhere and before. So I think having those conversations across that whole ecosystem is pretty critical.
I don't have a mic. But I do want to comment on this topic particularly because I think the universities, colleges, if you will, need to come together with industry and understand what they're looking for, right? Really align their programs, and even I'm going to call it their co-op and internship programs to what industry is looking for. Because, one thing I found is that, for example, we're currently working through our summer recruitment, if you will, co-op and internships. Well, listen, we want to try something different. We want somebody who's going to be available for 8 months or 12 months or 16 months. And what we found is that as we're talking to the universities and students, or sorry, universities and colleges, if you will, they don't have those programs. Some do, some don't, right? So I mean, but at the same time, professors actually acknowledge that, hey, you are right. We are seeing that, but we got to adapt our program to that. So when are they going to do that? Years from now, or is it going to be the next semester, right? So these are things that both you talk about the ecosystem. Absolutely, university, colleges, industry need to come together, right, and design those programs. So I mean, yes, I am passionate about this topic significantly, and I am lucky that I have a grade 12 child who's going to university next year. And as I was going for the career fairs, I was there for two reasons. One, for my son, obviously, and the second was, hey, let me share a couple of thoughts with you, what I think your university should be doing or should be focusing on. So I do hope that they've taken that to heart and make some changes to their respective programs.
Yeah, I sorry, it's quite loud. Sorry about that. I completely agree with what Sukh said, and I think what's really important around this conversation is the sense of urgency that it's required to go beyond just talking about it. I took a call this morning from basically like a not-for-profit to start talking, next week about how we're going to start working with their students and integrating them into the workforce for recruitment. And, a lot of what we're looking at and as we recruit is how do we recruit differently? How do we recruit using AI? We're not going to necessarily wait for a university program to meet our needs, because I think there's going to be other entities that are created out of necessity, or there will be some great institutions that kind of take that step, and so I think whether it's colleges, universities, not-for-profit, or even private sector schools, we've got to have a sense of urgency around the conversation, and then kind of getting together after the conference and all that sort of stuff to really action a lot of this stuff, because the industry is changing fast. AI and all that sort of stuff is here, and we have to do something because the problems that we have exist today, and they're only being exacerbated by the pace at which we're moving right now.
Absolutely. Love that. I also loved, the continuous learning approach and the whole ecosystem operations and the sense of urgency and actionable points. And that actually brings me to my next question. I'll start with you again, Sandra, about really, in terms of educational approaches and the curriculum designs. So, in the post-secondary world, what do you think are some ways in which we are identifying the gap of what is really taught in education settings and what is actually needed in the practical workforce?
Yeah, I think just to maybe riff off a little bit of what's just been said, I think flexibility in design and delivery is really critical. So I think that does mean that we need to be thinking a little bit differently about what we mean when we use the term classroom, because I think that can mean a lot of different things and necessarily has to for our learners themselves. So I'll say that when we were doing consultations for the development of our teaching and learning strategy, one of the things that our students told us was that, peer-to-peer learning for them is absolutely essential. Connecting with alumni is absolutely essential because they build networks that way, right? And so it's not just about the theoretical knowledge that they learn in the class and the applications of it, but also the ways in which they're building the capacity to be connected to others and then capitalize or, mobilize in different ways on those moments when a new opportunity might present itself. One of the other things that I think is really important and a changing part of the university context is what in English Canada we call PLAR, which is prior learning acquisition and recognition, as well as in Quebec, we call it RAC. It's just the same thing. It's a recognition that there are a whole range of competencies and skills and knowledge that learners are increasingly coming into the university with. And so how do we begin to recognize that? And I think, we often talk about speed. So I think this is I'm going to be very honest with y'all. It's a very troubling thing for me to think about as someone who's been trained as an academic, because I think speed absolutely is critical in skills, absolutely is essential for staying abreast of what the most in-demand needs are. But fundamentally, universities also do other things beyond just train workers. Universities also train citizens. Universities are also at the heart of new knowledge. They're at the heart of pure science, pure theoretical knowledge. And so how do we find the right balance? I think that's the real challenge that the higher education sector faces at this moment, is how do we balance both of those sets of needs? Because it won't help the technology world if we abandon that opportunity to invest in the creation of new knowledge, which then feeds new innovation and feeds new possibilities. So I think the partnership idea is really absolutely essential. I think more authentic learning in the classroom is really essential. Again, what we mean by that, is it work integrated learning? Is it experiential learning? Is it case studies? Opportunities where that balance again, and saying, okay, here's our theoretical, now let's place it into something else. And then the final piece for that is really the translation of what it is that students learn, whether it's in their peer-to-peer groups, whether it's in the classroom, in the ways that they are, gaining that theoretical knowledge, and then translating it into a different context. And I'm very intentional in using that term. I prefer not to use transferable skills. For me, it's really a question of translating it into a new context, into a new language, into a new environment, which is maybe a higher order level there for actually thinking, how do I take what I've learned there and bring it into a new environment and then grow that capacity even further? So I think that's part of what many of us in higher education are really thinking about. And of course, the lifelong learning piece is just always in our heads, right? And that means jarring this idea that we're only teaching 18 to 24-year-olds. We see that demographic is shifting quite a lot, and the way in which we're offering programs needs to shift accordingly.
Excellent. Yes, so the key word is balance. So balancing academic rigor with hands-on experience, right? And I was leaning again to you, Vanessa, because your body of work is similar to what Sandra does. So I wonder if you have any thoughts on the same question.
I do. I think that what Sandra was mentioning is super interesting, because NPower Canada does work in that sort of faster environment. Our programs are 15 weeks long. We do tech training. You come out certified with a tech skill in either data analytics or IT analyst or cybersecurity. And we do personal and professional training at the same time. So we get you ready for interviews. We prepare you in personal branding. So we are sort of that fast track that a lot of people are looking for if you are mid-career and looking to reskill, if you're a new arrival coming to Canada and trying to get into the workforce and you don't really know where to start. But that said, I also think that higher academia and university and those spaces for us as a society to create, and space is the key word, time and space to reflect on what is happening, we need that. That is absolutely critical. And it's funny because we were discussing earlier how in our own day, our own time, our own lives, we don't have space to think. How, like, we should be posting on LinkedIn. We don't. Why? I don't have time and space to think about the post, to look at all the links. What am I hashtagging? Oh my God, I can't. So as a society, as we're looking to speed up to keep up with AI, which is critical, we've got a workforce that needs that. What we're doing at NPower is incredibly important. But academia and higher education also plays a critical role to make sure that what's happening, that some of our best and brightest are up there reflecting and thinking and making sure and looking ahead and making sure that there's no like red flags that while we're all down here running crazy, we're missing. So I think that's really important. And I hope that that balance that we were just talking about, you know, can be found. And then, you know, we can help industry and recruitment.
And I was just going to say, I was literally turning
Oh,
to you
okay.
because I know this is close to your heart and you very passionate about. So
Yeah.
yes, love to hear your thoughts about just when it's touched upon the collaboration between industry and academia, right? And how can we improve that, if at all?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, you know, when we think about, you know, real world application of work integrated learning or experiential learning, right? If I use cybersecurity as an example, you know, cybersecurity, you know, you can learn a lot of the mechanics and theory, say in a classroom and whatnot. But then when you get into an organization and you actually want to apply it, you know, what you probably learn is a lot of it has to do with like social engineering of different people in the organization and like change management and communication and all that sort of stuff. And so when you're learning it, it gives you a different context when you then are able to, you know, like socialize the theory that you've taken in already while you're still in that school setting, because then you may be able to go back into the classroom and say, you know what, I was in a situation and this is what happened, this is how it played out. Can you help me expand on what I've seen? And so there's a different you know, level of applying what you've learned when you have that work integrated learning as part of, you know, your process. And, you know, I think it also will help address different issues of neurodiversity, which we've talked about in terms of, you know, how people learn, whether it's through watching, doing, experiencing, that sort of thing. And so, you know, there's a lot of different benefits, but I think, you know, it really just adds more color to, you know, what we're really doing in the schools. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was, you know, the whole, you know, creativity around the 18 to 24 group, right? Like, it's something that I actually see currently right now where, you know, I've worked with some professionals and we're representing them for new opportunities. And these people have excellent experience, you know, decades. And, you know, really some of the gaps that they have is actually like knowing how to represent that experience, how to articulate it, how to write the resume. And so it, you know, it's it's almost underselling themselves because like they can actually do the job, but they don't know how to articulate it. They don't know where to start, what you're looking for. And so there's a lot of opportunity for us to help close that gaps. I think academia could, you know, possibly re-engage the working population in that way in terms of just helping you understand, you know, how to go to a conference, how to network, how to interview, how to write a resume. And, you know, there's different elements that maybe aren't always traditionally classroom oriented, but are extremely important in terms of, you know, career progression and the ability for us to close some of these gaps.
So do
I'm
you
just
have
going to
something
provide
to
an
add?
example because, I mean, as I'm hearing all this, right, one example that comes to my mind actually that came across my desk the other day is actually an imbalance. You know, as I mentioned, right now we're going through the recruiting process for our summer internships, and I overheard a situation whereby the candidate that they were interviewing, of course, university student, they interviewed very well, strong social skills. You could clearly see that they could do the job, but they really lacked the Excel skills because this was actually a finance internship. So of course, as you could imagine, Excel was very, very important. But as they were going through some scenarios, they were having issues or problems with, you know, with their macro skills, I guess, if you want to call it that. And so then I sort of mentioned to them, well, if they're actually very strong from a social perspective, the presenting, the other foundational skills that they have, and they're somewhat weak in Excel, but don't you think that's something that's teachable within our own organization? And the response was absolutely. So I said, why are we discounting that candidate then? And as a result of that, they've actually reconsidered. And I think that candidate's going to be getting a position in the upcoming summer. But I mean, that's an example of something that was an imbalance, but as you sort of talk about it and say, you know what, listen, we could sort of take that into and make it into a positive. And I really do hope that the person does get the role because they were very, very highly qualified from what I saw and heard. So that's an example, right?
That is indeed a brilliant example for sure. And so from what I'm hearing is, yes, it's the collaboration piece of it, but it's also like work on both sides, right? So yeah. And that actually brings me sort of the next segment that I do want to talk about, which is really, the success stories. And I want to start with you, Sukh, because I know luckily we work together a lot, and Kyndryl has been a champion in partnering with TECHNATION now and developing these innovative work integrated learning programs, and we've had great success. So keeping that in mind, and besides the story that you just shared, maybe you want to share with us like some other examples where you've really seen the transition of, hiring your summer interns and have them, translate into something super successful. You want to share some of those?
Absolutely. So, right from, I think we started this session at 9 o'clock, it's all about progression, right? It's all about progression. How can we help? How can industry help? How could nonprofit help, and so forth? And how could academia help, actually? So, I mean, all these things are very, very positive and very progressive as we're looking at it, at the future of our country, right, and our communities when it comes to IT. And when you look at all this, foundational skills, core competencies are so important. We all agree, right? It could be, in education, it could be in a professional setting, having the core set of skills, extremely, extremely important. But then how do we try to transition that skill, if you will, or the foundation into practical, into real life? Right, and that's where I believe that industry comes into play, because it is our responsibility to provide those opportunities. Right, these students come forward with lots of I'm gonna say critical thinking, different ways of doing things. That is where we, Kyndryl, come into play, and we provide those opportunities. Now, yes, Kyndryl is only a few years old because we were part of IBM before that, and we were part of IBM's GTS unit, which we've now become independent Kyndryl. So even though we only have 2 years worth of Kyndryl experience, but we come forward with many, many, many years of experience in terms of how to conduct internship programs, co-op programs, and so forth. So the approach that we have taken is that really bringing in students and partnering them with professionals. Obviously, you want to give them, some sort of job shadowing, if you will. And we really get them to work on real proposals, real customer challenges that they actually get to take forward with their colleagues, if you will. And I mean, if you're thinking, well, hang on for a second, you're going to put a student in front of a customer? Absolutely, why not? So what we do is that we actually do send them out, in the industry, and if it's virtual or in person, they go out there, right, and they're right, and they participate in the business discussion, in the business meeting, and they provide their point of view when it comes to technology. And I will tell you that they also have an opinion, and it's a valuable opinion. But we at Kyndryl give them the opportunity to do so. And I will also tell you that when we show up with an intern or a student, it also looks pretty good as on us as well, because we're giving, opportunities to other people, and, our customers welcome that. So don't think that, okay, well, it's frowned upon. How would it look? It looks perfectly fine, right? It's, it's actually encouraged. The second example that I would like to bring is really ownership that the interns and the co-op students really bring to the organization. Right now, we have 3 interns dedicated to an app, leveraging Power BI, and the objective is the app is to increase productivity, or even giving business insight to the sellers, to the business community, if you will. Basically, my partners, giving them more and more intel as they're talking to customers. And what they've done is that they've been working on this app from idea creation, putting the app together, and going forward with all of the reviews, the business reviews that they have with senior management, including the country president. So you're going to say, well, you're going to put these people in front of the company president? Absolutely, why not? We are a much flatter organization. We would like to give them the opportunities. And just like all of us at one point in time or another, we do have those jitters. Well, guess what? Those jitters go away very, very quickly when you're sitting in front of the president and you need to talk about business content. So we do this in practice, and it works wonderfully well. So, as Rashim said, I'm a very, very passionate person when it comes to student learning, giving them the opportunities. I just tell them all the time that I hope you will hire me one day, right, in years to come, that I could work, work for them. But I'll leave you with this, right, and I'm very proud of this. Last year, we actually had about 20 to 25 interns, 10 on the business side or IT, if you will, and then we had about 10 or 15 on the finance side. But on the IT side, what we did is that we actually did a profile on each one of those individuals, on LinkedIn, because once again, that's their digital profile, that's their digital footprint. So they actually went in and they actually did a little section about themselves in terms of what they learned, how their internship was with Kyndryl. So do check it out, because that's something that we're very, very proud of. Number one, bringing in these students, teaching them, and number two, just showcasing what we're all about. And I'm happy to say I think we're going to be doubling those numbers this summer. But I will also say that I'm also hearing in the industry, some organizations are eliminating their summer program, which is very disheartening. All right, and I do hope that sort of turns, because this program in partnership with TECHNATION is really, really important to us.
Excellent. Thank you for saying that. That's very heartwarming. And I think this panel is, testimony of the fact that work integrated learning is really super beneficial and sort of backing that up with a little bit of research. And the report that I was mentioning earlier, the impact of work integrated learning, it actually says that, students who participate in co-ops, they tend to change their majors a lot less. They have higher GPAs. They're more likely to graduate sooner, and like I said, with flying colors. And they're also intrinsically motivated to apply deeper learning strategies, right? So I'm wondering, Sandra, if you have some anecdotes from some students whom you've seen thrive in, co-ops or internships as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like all universities, we've invested quite heavily in our co-op programs, and a few years ago, we've committed to graduating every student with at least 2 experiential learning opportunities in the time that they're at Concordia, and that's necessitated that we take all kinds of new approaches to what that looks like, because they're not going to all be in co-ops. So one of the interesting things that we know, for instance, about co-op is we have a higher threshold for students entering into co-op programs. They have to already have higher GPA. So I was thinking about that stat that you just shared with us, Rashim, in the sense that those are students who are already high performing, who are entering into co-op programs. Naturally, we want to send our best forward. But it does mean that there are many other students who, for whatever reason, may not be succeeding as well academically. We have a couple of programs, one in particular called Beat the Odds, that's actually designed specifically for students who are not your typical EL or internship or co-op participant. And so these are students who might be parents who can't take a whole term off or can't adjust their lives as easily. I mean, I'm saying this even with my own 19-year-old niece who said, I don't want to leave my house and my mom to go out and then pay rent somewhere else. I want to be in this geographic region, which has meant that her internship opportunities have decreased. So anyway, the program is really designed for folks, for whatever reason, are not as easily adapted to the co-op environment. And we've had tremendous success. Just like you said, in terms of the outcomes for these learners, in particular, one of the things that I think, and this is the case as well with another program that we run for humanities students, where do you go when you want to find an internship? Where do you place yourself if you're a philosophy student or an English major or a cultural studies student? So I'll speak with my home background there. What we find the single most important outcome for those students is that they gain so much confidence and the ability to then say, this is what I'm learning in school. This is what I am able to bring forward into this work context. And here are the areas where I might want to learn a little bit more. Our Humanities Plus program is specifically designed, for instance, from a strengths-based approach. The students take Clifton strengths. They get to know a little bit about themselves. They get to learn a little bit about, like, how do I prefer to learn? And they discover all kinds of things about themselves themselves that maybe in the course of their studies they lose. And one thing I just want to add as well, this is a personal reflection, is that there was a time, obviously, I work in the university sector, when I loved doing just straight up book learning, loved it. And in fact, I'm a media historian, so it was even worse. Give me an old, dusty newspaper, and I am in heaven. Take me to the archives, and that's my happy place. And increasingly, as I age, I find I need to be in it. I don't want to read about it. I want to just go and do it. And so one of the things that I think is really important for us to also remember is that as one progresses, as they move through their careers, that the continual reflection, what am I missing? What are my strengths? What can I augment about those strengths? What's the next lateral move from here? And then how do I learn best? Those are the key skills that are going to make our future workforce and our current workforce as flexible as we really need them to be in order to keep evolving with these technological changes. These programs have been tremendous for allowing these learners to have the confidence to put themselves forward into unknown contexts and to put themselves out there, frankly. So one of the things we know for underrepresented groups is that if they look through a job profile and can't tick off every single box that's there, oh, that's not for me. I'm not qualified enough. I'm not going to apply. And we know that the example that you gave, Sukh, is a fantastic one of, there are many, many organizations out there that are fully prepared to teach. They're not to take like these fully formed, workers and just go be, but rather that they're really invested in working with them and growing their talent, because it is extremely expensive to be looking for new talent all the time, right? So there are many, many, the smartest ones, I'll say, organizations that are really wanting to stick with the workforce that they have. And those are the things that, as a young or inexperienced or insecure graduate of a university, context, they don't know yet, right? They may not know or may not believe, and that programs that give them the opportunity to go out there and test and to learn build up their confidence in doing that work.
Excellent. Any further thoughts, Sabe?
Yeah, actually, I come at this from maybe a different angle, and specifically a small business owner, right? Like when we think of internships, it can be daunting, right? Because we don't necessarily have, you're thinking of time to productivity of those people. We don't have these big elaborate programs developed, and most people, you're used to the big names of the Kyndryls and IBMs and stuff like that. But a big part of what's helped, one of my favorite things about TECHNATION and really like just our whole partnership has been how the Career Ready program has made that daunting task just less daunting and more something that we can pursue. And so when I think of success stories, I actually think of the perspective and the important role of government and wage subsidy programs, because there's probably a ton of small business owners that also want to take advantage of maybe some of the early stage career people or people that are reskilling and upskilling. But there's a very real calculation of I don't know if I can take that on. I kind of need them to be productive. And when you have programs like this, it makes it more possible for small business owners to get involved. And we had our first intern in 2023. The experience actually was so much better than I could have thought. And, had I not had that support, I wouldn't know and be so excited about it. We are planning on doing more internships. And I think, that important role of government, especially when we think of, 98% of businesses in Canada are small or medium-sized businesses. Like that support and not only the existence, but the amplification so that founders and owners know that it exists and it's accessible is important. So yeah, no, thank you for making that possible.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And like I said, this is truly the most rewarding part of the work that we do at TECHNATION, that yes, as you said, it makes sort of the transaction and hiring and like the financial aspect easy, but really it is what it does to a small business owner and how it enriches their lives and how is it they grow from being into a basement into this multi-level office. And yes, we love to partner with the Kyndryls of the world, but I want to say this very proudly that 75% of our work is actually dedicated to focusing supporting small businesses and SMEs. So yeah, thank you for saying that. Okay, so bringing this discussion from sort of like this human aspects back into technology. And Vanessa, I remember the last time we spoke, you were talking about how NPower is now delivering courses with regards to digital technology, cybersecurity, and AI. Sorry. So with that said, what according to you would be, I want to say, some trends or technology that we should be looking out for that you think are going to be in demand in the future? And what can we do, as industry and as academia to prepare ourselves for that?
If I had the answer to that, right? I mean, I think that hits on so many things. I think that really no one has the answer to exactly what's coming. I think that the key for all of us to be prepared, be you academia, be you recruiting, industry, anyone, is in partnerships. We are all experts in our own areas. And we can save so much time and energy and demystify certain things by really recognizing what you're seeing. And so at NPower, we're not as big as like a university. We don't have as many restrictions perhaps on what we do. We have partners in industry. We have private partners. So we work with Google, we work with Microsoft, we work with the big banks, we work with insurance companies. And what we do well, and what I would say is our organizational experiential learning, is we listen to what everyone is telling us and we do our absolute best to adapt as quickly as possible. It does mean that our staff are constantly having to change. And by constantly, I mean we have new cohorts every 15 weeks. We are introducing changes almost every time. So I'll go back to what I said when we opened the discussion, which is really we encourage people who are in the workforce to keep an open mind and be flexible and look to network and look to find mentors, be them younger, be them older, be them in other fields. We encourage it for organizations as well, for academia, for government. There's going to be some major shifts coming, and I don't think that they're going to be unsurmountable, but I think we can make it a lot easier on each other if we face them, rather in competition, but more in how we can support across the board.
Excellent. Thank you for saying that. And I think you just sort of, in the interest of time, I do want to really make sure we give our audiences probably some best practices, right? So taking back to, again, I want to say a more human-centric approach, and something we touched upon already is when we were talking about cultural fit and cultural enhancement. And we already said that, especially when it comes to hiring equity or deserving groups, employers sort of struggle with maybe unconscious biases or some myths and superstitions. So again, I know we are all champions here in sort of addressing that, but what I would like to know, and probably, if you want to share some nuggets and some strategies of what we can do as professionals, I want to say, to sort of combat those myths and just nurturing strong talent and, help them transition into the real world.
Can I quickly, just because this ties into something that Sandra touched on that I think is so important, and I think everyone knows, but we need to remind, a lot of these equity-seeking groups, we do a lot of work with newcomers. We have so many people who come into our programs for free training who already have PhDs in computer science. They're coming in because they're looking for insight into North America. They're looking for insight into how do I find my place in this community? And they're looking really, they don't know it, but they're looking for confidence. And so confidence comes from doing things you think are difficult for you. Confidence comes from looking at that job and saying, oh, I don't have half of this, and applying anyways and getting the interview. I think it's our responsibility as people who are supporting employment seekers and industry to make sure that people recognize their own value, really understand where they have a place in the community, and encourage employers, as was mentioned before. You're hiring a person, not a skill set. You're hiring someone who may have just arrived and say they have no experience in Canada, but they've navigated the immigration system, which, let me tell you, no joke. So these are really dedicated, hardworking, amazing people. That's what you're hiring, not an Excel expert.
I couldn't agree more. You know, saying that you're hiring a person, not a skill set. Oh, I wish I could say that. Just
It's yours.
Yeah, no. I love it. Yeah, I'm going to continue on that same, you know, train of thought, because I think, you know, we think of these things as organizational problems. These are human problems, and we need to break it down to a human level in terms of how we solve it. And so, you know, it could be that little thing of, you know, telling someone that they're doing a good job, or, you know, encouraging someone to apply, making an introduction, you know, doing small things that help build confidence and encourage people to do more things that, you know, help them, you know, grow and possibly do the same thing. I think, you know, when people have those types of experiences, they're encouraged to pass them on. And you know, I think it's really just, you know, a lot of like active listening and empathy and stuff like that. And like, I know, again, we're having a business conversation and all that sort of stuff, but if we just compartmentalize the problem and say, okay, where's our starting point? I think that would be it. And then, you know, through compounded behaviors of doing these sort of things, we can start to talk a lot more about success stories than the size of the problem, because it is big, right? And it's not getting smaller. However, I think a different approach to solving it is really putting more emphasis and momentum behind the success stories, and then hopefully there's a snowball effect in terms of, you know, what that results in the months and years ahead.
Excellent.
So, you know, we talk about bridging the gap, right? So, we have a lot of newcomers, call them international students as well, that are coming to our country, and they're smart individuals, right? And I mean, you know, they've come here for a reason, right? And some of these individuals are already a skilled individuals, right? And sometimes different reasons, and I know it is a social bias that we sort of shy away from. The person does not have Canadian or North American experience. Is that really relevant in 2024? I don't think so, right? Matter of fact, I had the privilege of going to India 2 times in the past 3 months. We had to take a client because Kyndryl has a significant presence there. And I will tell you that the skill level there is perfectly fine, right? I would take any one of those individuals and bring them here and say, hey, I would love for you to be part of my team, and put them in front of my client. Absolutely. These skills that individuals are coming here with, they are transferable. They are consistent. There's nothing different about it at all. Matter of fact, we're talking over lunch that even when you look at their English, it's actually better than ours, right? In terms of when they're writing, right? The grammar, the punctuations, it's actually perfect, right? And I mean, some of us have forgotten, I guess, and I'm one of them, how to write in paragraphs, right? Well, we know over here when I send out emails, it's always point form, right? Right? And but that's the truth, right? So bridging the gap, I do believe that we do need to look at the globe. We do need to look at some of these people that are coming to our awesome country, and it's going to just make it better. And we just need to recognize that and really fill the gap with some of these awesome individuals.
I'm at the end of a brilliant series of people here speaking, so I'm like, what else am I going to add to this? The one thing I think, I'm going to personalize this for, again, for just a second. So I was a prof for, I don't know, 15 years before I moved into senior leadership. And the single most important thing that I learned in the last 5 years is active listening, 100%, like learning to keep my mouth shut and listen before I speak. The curiosity to actually hear what people are saying, right? To actually be open to what's being said rather than assuming you already know where someone's going. And waiting for them to stop so that you can tell your brilliant point. Because profs are really, we're kind of not so great at doing that. And the other thing that is the most important thing that I've learned now that I'm part of an executive team is to surround myself with people who think differently than me. It is so important when you're problem solving that you're not all thinking in exactly the same way, because it means that you're going to misread whatever problem you might be looking at. You're going to see it from only one point of view. And, you know, that seems so obvious to say, but our natural inclination is to always avoid conflict. It's always to go in like ways. And so many aspects of our society is now really oriented towards that, right? Where we have, you know, bubbles where we're contained within a certain, with like thinkers. And seeking those diverse points of view, other ways of thinking, has just been so tremendous for actually even teaching me about my own blind spots in the way that I approach problems or in the way that I might, you know, see a particular, you know, issue before me.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I said this to you earlier, and I think curiosity is the word of the year, or probably the word of a lifetime, really, right? So to approach everything with a curious mindset, that's that. But this has been a fascinating conversation. I've learned so much. I want to quickly turn to the audience and see if we have some questions.
Hi, Isaiah. Hi, Sandra. Concordia. But yeah, but not to pick on the academic in the room, but we know that academia can be slow in adapting and mirroring the world. And I'm familiar of everything teaching and learning does at Concordia, but in a broader spectrum of how do you guys think that, because yes, we have co-ops and we're trying to get students to experience the workforce a little earlier, but what strategies or impact do you think the workforce can have to change the curriculum so that we just learn what we need to, or incorporate, like, for example, like tools like Excel? Like sometimes you'll be in a finance degree and you won't learn how to financially model. You have to go and start and then be taught on the first day, and that performance or that anxiety, not everybody can raise to that end. So how can we get like the company influence in the universities to give the students kind of like the learning environment? Because co-op is great, but not everybody can get an internship. Not everybody can join co-op type of thing.
Yeah, Isaiah, you've put your finger on the single most wicked problem I deal with in my everyday life. So if you've got ideas, like, we'll talk after. You know, I think the partnership idea, I can't really stress that enough. Many departments in the university have what they call industry boards, where they bring in, you know, a panel of, generally speaking, alumni who have an investment in the university to come back and share their experiences, and then have, you know, some dialogue around the curriculum. You know, that works very well in some cases, and in other cases, it's not always a great fit. So I'm thinking again of the humanities. Who do you bring in to come in and sit with you? You know, what are the places that you might be pulling from? So I think, you know, one of the most important things, I wanted to give a shout out, first of all, to like York University. York has a relatively brand new program that leads to a Bachelor in Applied Science. And 80% of the time they spend actually in the workplace. It's not in the classroom, it's in the workplace. And it's this real trusting relationship between, the promoters, the academics who are certifying. So I think let me just take a step back and say that that's one of the biggest blocks that academics have is the social responsibility given to universities that we certify when we confer a degree, that we've certified that our graduates are leaving with a certain set of skills. It takes tremendous trust to hand that over to somebody else, not to say, oh, you can't do it as well as us, but rather, how do we validate that? How do we change that? So this is really the work that we do, is also recognizing what does assessing learning need to look like in the 21st century? And it's not exams. I'll just leave it there. It's very controversial for me to say that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure if we have time for any more questions, but hey, our panelists are still around, so do take the time to connect with them during your coffee break and learn more. I want to say thank you once again. It has been absolutely engaging, insightful, and a super constructive conversation. And it's been a pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you.